Good afternoon, everybody. It is Monday, April 22nd. Happy Earth Day from the Transportation and Environment Committee. We have two items on our agenda today. One is a work session on the FY25 operating budget for WSSC, and the second is a mid-cycle review of WSSC's CIP. And we all know that WSSC is incredibly important to Montgomery County and to our region, providing 162 million gallons of water a day. 162 million gallons of water a day to the nearly 2 million residents of Montgomery County and Prince George's County. And in an effort to make sure that our water is safe and flows properly, we need to make sure that this budget is right and that WSSC has the resources that they need. And in this budget, in the FY25 capital and operating budgets, there are increases and there are rate increases as well that are proposed. So with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Levchenko to provide some of those details and walk us through.
All right, and we do have some presentation slides in the packet, which will probably be the most efficient way to go through this. I was going to mention just a few quick summary points. First, the total proposed operating budget for WSSC Water is $1.02 billion. That's about a 9.5% increase over the approved FY24 budget. And the water and sewer operating expense portion of that, which affects rates, is going up a similar amount, about 9.7%. And I've noted at the beginning of the packet some of the big ticket items, such as debt service, which is we're seeing increases there, as well as in the regional sewage disposal charges. We'll be talking more about that. And then the catch-all category, all other expenditures, is also up, which also includes PAYGO in there as well. Before getting into more of that, why don't we have the WSSC Water folks that are here today introduce themselves, and then we can move into that presentation. Their presentation covers most of what's in my packet. To the degree there's some things after that, we can catch up on those, but I think that would be the most efficient way to go through the items today.
Very good. WSSC, I don't know who wants to kick us off.
Chair Glass, Councilmember Stewart, and Councilmember Balcombe. On behalf of our Vice Chair Foster, Commissioner Bayonet, I am, for the record, Munetsi Timothy Masara, the Chief Financial Officer. I'm joined by our Budget Division Manager, Carolina Powell, and Sunil Pandya, who is our Capital Division Section Manager. We have Rosanna LaPlante, our Division Manager for Engineering and Construction, Ehad Nizian, who is our newly appointed Chief Engineer, as well as Faria Baba, who is our Operating Section Manager.
You got the A-team here. Fantastic.
So to just jump into our presentation, as you're aware, in our governance, we are run by 6 commissioners, 3 of which are appointed by Prince George's County and 3 by Montgomery County. As indicated, we serve 162 million gallons of water per day to our customers. We're established in 1918. We have 105 years and counting of no water violations. We proudly serve 1.8 million residents and cover 100 square miles between Montgomery County and Prince George's County. What we wanted to point out in this slide is just really to bring attention of the fact that federal funding investments in water infrastructure has significantly dropped. In 1977, 63% of all capital expenditure was on water infrastructure. Right now, it's dropped significantly, and of the $50 billion bipartisan infrastructure law, only 5% is needed for the water sector. And what this really indicates is that there's not enough federal funding to assist the needed infrastructure upgrades or known challenges such as PFAS and lead pipe replacement. Our impact on the community is shown to the right. For every $1 million we invest, 15 to 18 jobs are created. What we did in our FY25 budget, we increased our customer assistance by $4.2 million up to $7.7 million, which is a 121% increase, and there's a slide dedicated to that. We also just wanted to show our impact on our local communities. We contributed $131 million to 170 different businesses in Montgomery and Prince George's counties in 2023, and that included 75+ million to minority and women-owned businesses. As you're aware, the counties recommended an 8.5% increase in the spending affordability guideline resolutions. We requested an 11.6% increase, whilst the proposed increase of 8.5%, up from our 7% last year, represents a $73.3 million increase. We were still forced to make cuts to our budget in the full amount of $81.2 million to get from where we had the initial pre-SAG internal budget formulation down to the 8.5%. And the details are shared in this slide, where we had to make a reduction across the board. So in operations and maintenance, we took 47 million down from multiple operating areas, meaning that there were some delays in projects, and in our asset refresh, particularly our vehicles, a lot of which are beyond their useful life. So we had to schedule that over a 3-year period. In capital investments, we took a reduction of $6 million in debt service. So that meant that we were planning on issue of fewer bonds to support our CIP. For Team H2O, there was a $15 million reduction in total rewards, and so we had to defer our plans for retention and offering competitive salaries. We have a class and comp study going on right now, and the expected time frame of completion is July, so that'll inform what we're going to be doing when we come with our FY26 request when it relates to retaining and attracting talented individuals. And then we took a $14 million reduction in pay-go. At the time we came to you with our proposed budget, we received the initial amount from DC Water for the regional sewer and waste. That amount went up by $4 million after we submitted our proposed budget. So what that means is that we're starting the year with a $4 million pressure. What we're doing is working with DC Water for the upcoming years to make sure that we get a better estimate, because I believe over the last few years there were those subtle changes because they're on a different reporting timeline. Their fiscal year begins in October, whereas ours begins in July, so some of the timing issues factor into their estimates. So again, we're actively working with them, and they're aware of the request and how it impacts us and when we come to request for our funding.
Just on that point there, the $4 million increase from DC Water, what is the percentage within that line item? That $4 million represents what percentage increase?
We went from 11 to 14, so it's about a 30% increase.
Thank you.
From what we initially presented in our proposed budget. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that total amount for budgeted for 24 was 64 million, but that was lower than it actually turned out to be, or it will turn out to be. And then the proposed amount without the 4 million was 76 million. So the 76 is going to 80.
Yep. Thank you.
So just wanted to share our budget priorities and some of the challenges we had. For the funding priorities, we wanted to make sure that we're requesting exactly what we need, so no more than we need to support our $9 billion in infrastructure assets. We want to continue investing in our capital, addressing deferred improvements, and ensuring that we continue to be compliant with all the regulatory requirements. For Team H2O, as indicated, we are looking to offer competitive salaries to retain staff as well as attract individuals. We're also switching over, and you'll see in our headcount request, additional headcount that were temporary. We're now bringing them on board in-house. And we also want to make sure that we are meeting our financial metrics to protect our AAA rating, which I believe I mentioned it when we came for our proposed budget. We were able to get that retained for the 23rd consecutive year. We're overcoming declining consumption, as well as the lag in rates from our requests in the prior years. So a significant thing to consider in this area is that the impact of the delta between the requested rate and the approved rate for the period FY19 to FY24 is a cumulative of $177.8 million. We are also looking to overcome inflationary pressures because, as we're aware, supply chain issues have caused increases in chemicals, water meters, construction, heat, light, and power, and as mentioned, our regional sewage disposal.
Good afternoon. For the record, I'm Letitia Carolina Powell. Okay. So for our fiscal year 24 approved versus 25 proposed, it's an increase of 12.2%. And our proposed FY25 operating budget is $1.8 billion compared to $1.6 billion for FY24. On this slide, we have our highlights for FY25. We are investing in our workforce. Skilled workers ensure that we operate efficiently and that we effectively maintain our vast infrastructure. A knowledgeable workforce helps us to meet regulatory standards and compliance requirements. We are also improving the customer experience of our internal and external stakeholders, and we are continuing water quality excellence. As mentioned earlier, we have a 105, almost 106-year record of no drinking water quality violations. And building resilience in our infrastructure and operations is crucial. We are fortifying our ability to anticipate and mitigate risks, safeguard against cyber threats, and optimize asset performance to help ensure uninterrupted service delivery. We're also integrating diversity, equity, inclusion, and environmental justice into our procurement EEO and investments planning processes, and we're enhancing customer affordability programs. We've had a revision to high bill adjustments for up to 2 consecutive billing periods, and we are moving to cap re-enrollment every 2 years instead of each year. And we're also implementing a leak repair program for our cap customers. And we are increasing financial assistance by $4.2 million in fiscal year 25. That brings the total to more than $7.7 million, which is 121% over fiscal year 24. So for FY25, we applied a transparent outcome-focused approach to budgeting, and the budget is supported by an 8.5% revenue increase. This budget includes 127 additional work years for operations and capital program delivery. And we have 3 operating funds. Our water operating fund is increasing by 11.5%, sewer operating by 8.2%, and the general bond debt service fund is decreasing by 15.9%. Now, on this slide, we show a list of the 127 positions that are being added. Many of these positions are contract positions that are being converted to permanent positions, offering more stability by reducing turnover and improving knowledge retention. So for FY25, our total work years that we are requesting to be approved would be 1,963. Okay. This slide shows the combined water and sewer operating funds, sources and uses. So our sources of revenue, the main sources of revenue are volumetric charges, excuse me, which are water consumption charges and sewer use charges. In this budget, they'll make up about 80% of our revenue. The fixed charges are from the infrastructure investment fee and the account maintenance fee. And in this budget, it would be about 13%, which is, they're increasing 65%. And so while this is improvement, is still below industry standard, which is about 20% of revenue for water and sewer utilities. At the bottom of the page, we have the uses of revenue. Regional sewage disposal, which is increasing nearly 20%, but is still below what is expected, the actual expected cost of about $80.9 million on the third row there. And debt service, because we are a capital-intensive agency, that is the largest component of our operating budget. And as mentioned earlier by Mr. Levchenko and our CFO, regional sewage disposal is increasing substantially over what was approved for FY24, which was the $64.2 million. Actuals for FY21 shown here are $71 million. We recently, last month, received a settlement letter from Blue Plains DC Water stating with an additional bill for last year because they said we underbilled them. So their costs have been increasing significantly, primarily due to a significant increase in critical parts, as well as personnel and contract costs. And also, they're implementing PFAS monitoring. And with that, I will turn it over to our capital budget section manager.
Thank you. For the record, my name is Sunil Pandya. I'm the CIP section manager. So the FY25 mid-cycle budget, we presented an increase of $2.6 million, and that $2.6 million covered various expense categories. I do want to point out that the additional $2.6 million is within the recommended increase of the 8.5%, and it does not impact any of our financial metrics. So the 2.6 net increase within that package is we added $6 billion to plan and improve improvements for our PFAS. We invested an additional $1 million in generators for Colesville and Little Seneca wastewater pumping stations to ensure that operational reliability and resilience is improved. We added $1 million for our facility plans so that we can begin to program a systematic replacement of our critical assets. We also capitalized $1.6 million for manholes from our operating budget to capital, as was allowed by our auditors. There was a payroll adjustment for $3 million. This essentially is the reconciliation between actual CIP payroll that is charged to the operating budget versus what is initially planned when the individual PDFs, the project development forms, are created. And the last was, and a major reduction was the one in Blue Plains. Blue Plains did a mid-year review of their 25 capital expenditure planning, and they reduced their capital budget by $10 million. However, overall, the Blue Plains 6-year plan increased by a very nominal $2.3 million. So it was more a shifting of expenditures to the outer years from 25. So the overall pluses and minuses resulted in a net change of $2.6 million being added to the mid-cycle.
And as we jump into efforts to maintain affordability, I'd just like to indicate that our illustrious General Manager, CEO, Keisha Powell, has joined us. So we appreciate that. With the efforts to maintain affordability, we've taken the track where we are focusing on identifying non-rate-based revenue opportunities. That includes maximizing external funding opportunities. We're looking to increase our carbon reduction initiatives in underserved and unserved areas, as well as improve our customer experience programs. We are monetizing real estate assets, pursuing patent licensing. We are implementing a biosolids business plan and maximizing our sale of natural gas and renewable natural gas as well. We're looking to introduce equity improvements to the system development charge process to support smart growth, so that way growth pays for growth. We also are looking to work with our congressional delegation, our state elected officials, as well as the council, to ensure that certain programs such as the Low-Income Housing Water Assistance Program funding and the Maryland Water System Assistance Program become permanent fixtures. Internally, we are redeploying staff to assist in certain areas. So in our performance and accountability program, we have staff that are dedicating anywhere between 8 and 16 hours a pay period to assist us with ensuring our metrics are maintained. And we're also continuing the revenue recovery strategy to reduce our customer delinquencies. This slide here really just details our improvements to the customer assistance programs. Our PIPE ER program has increased by $100,000. The CAP leak repair program is now a permanent process and is there $350,000. For the water fund donation, that used to be strictly based on donations. So what we've done is allocated $500,000 to that. So that's going to be a continuous program. And for the Promise Pay, the cost of administrating this program is $3.3 million. And what Promise Pay is, it is the platform in which all our delinquent account holders are allowed to go in and go on a payment plan, and it's managed by Promise Pay. So the total assistance, as indicated, went up by 121% year to year. For our long-term financial plan, what we really wanted to do with this slide was just show that we're focused on maintaining our positive metrics that provide, and also that those will provide operational efficiencies and assist in us retaining our high credit rating. When it comes to leverage external funding, we wanted to show you the funding that we were seeking from the federal government and the state government to support our programs. Sewer reconstruction is $20 million. The regional water supply resiliency is 4.8. Piscataway bioenergy, we applied for 3.4 million. Water reconstruction is 2 million, and 600,000 for our energy performance program. And for the operating budget, we have applied for $2.5 million in performance-based operating grants for water recovery facilities from the Maryland Department of the Environment. As it relates to our rates, for FY24, we have 2 fees, and those are highlighted by the orange piece there. Our fees are the account maintenance fee, which is meant to recover the costs for account maintenance and servicing, and this includes meter reading, preparing and sending bills, and receiving and processing payments. The infrastructure investment fee helps pay our debt service expense related to the pipe replacement programs in the approved capital improvements program. As you can see from the table, our fixed fees are lower than our regional peers. Our volumetric is second to Fairfax, and however, we have a much larger and more complex commission than they do. When we were going through our rate design for FY25, based on our cost of service study that was completed, we were presented with 7 rate design alternatives by our consultants, and we selected and recommended to the Commission the base case plus scenario. So as you can see, there's for the average user, there's a 10.5 total bill impact. For high water user residential is 4.7. Customer assistance individuals only saw a 2.4% increase. The larger increases were non-residential. The average user had a 3.4% increase, whilst a high water user had a 16.6% increase. And a lot of that is really driven by the fact that the fixed fees increased, and the fixed fee amount adjusts by meter size, and there's a slide later on that gives various scenarios with various water users, which will be able to display the impact that that had. The reason why we recommended base case plus option to management was, the first one was that we're a cost of service recovery commission, and so cost of service recovery was very important, and that resulted in the $20 increase to the average user in their quarterly fixed fees. That $20 represented a 65% increase. And what we want to do is get closer to the industry standard of 20%. We were on 9.6%. So this $20 increase brings us closer to 15%, and we wanted to step it to the level that we need to be versus just throwing it at 20%, and then that'll cause rate shock amongst our customers. And if we go back to the table with the options, option 1, option 2, option 3, and option 4, those were really closer to the full cost of service, and we felt that that impact would cause a bit more stress to our customers. So we wanted to sort of gradually get to where we were. And then also when we met with the rating agencies, the one thing they also said that, us having greater fixed fees also provides rate stability, revenue stability. So that's something that we wanted to show responsiveness to, as well as make sure that internally we're seeking to recover our cost of service.
Keep a tab on that chart, because I suspect we'll come back to it.
Okay. This is the chart I was referring to, where the fixed fee charges adjust with the meter size. So this shows customer bills, what they look like at various meter sizes at different levels of consumption. And as we go down the table, when we get to the 2 meters, the 3 meters, and the 6 meters, those are all non-residentials. As far as our rate increases go, we wanted to show what we have been comparing to with our regional peers. We have lagged behind our peers historically, but from 2025 through 26, we level out when we compare ourselves with DC Water. This shows the impact of our residential bill. It's 1% for FY25 and less than 1% for the affordability threshold. Our average increase, our cumulative increase from 2000 to 2024 have been 182%, which is less than the 195% U.S. city average, and it is far less than 427% for DC Water, 656% for Baltimore City, as well as 282% for Fairfax. We just wanted to really end the presentation on the high note, just showing what the rating agency said from our visits. Fitch upgraded us from negative to stable. Moody's was impressed, saying that we had a large, robust service area. Then the ad valorem tax was also a credit positive, and the same thing with the S&P. So with that, are there any questions?
Thank you.
And I will go back to.
Thank you. Exactly. Get that on standby. Thank you very much, Mr. Musara, for that presentation. And Ms. Powell, GM Powell, nice to see you. Welcome to come up. You're safer where you are. Your option. But appreciate you being here. To the team, thank you. And of course, to Vice Chair Foster and Commissioner Bayonet, thank you very much for your leadership. So I'll be true to my word and refer back to that chart regarding the bill impacts. At first glance, it appears that households that use less water are getting the highest increase. Is that a correct read of this chart?
That is a correct read, because the average user is presumed to be at 145 gallons a day, which is in Tier 1. So on the volumetric rate, the fact that you're in Tier 1 and we increased the fixed fee, that's really where there's going to be the most impact. However, that's why we said we wanted to introduce it at a staggered basis versus throwing it in there. What we were able to do, however, was for the customers in the customer assistance program, they do not pay any fixed fees. And so that impact is not on them. So the volumetric rate went down and the fixed fees went up. So there was that exchange. But again, as we stated, for the average users, the impact was, even though it was 65% on a percentage basis, it was $20 a quarter, $20 per bill per quarter.
And so for a majority of the households that utilize 100 gallons per day and less, is that the structure, is that the fee for that tier? And then if you're above it, is it like the income tax in which you get charged additionally for that next 45 gallons per day or so?
For volumetric,
or are they completely
yes.
separate?
For volumetric, we have 4 tiers, so each tier has a different rate, and it's an increasing rate. So you get billed at the percentage of your highest rate.
And so is that, I will presume that is why you view this as a fair structure, because the increase is impacting everyone, but then there's subsequent increases for those that use more?
There's 2 reasons. So for the volumetric piece, the more you use, the more you pay. And for the fixed fees related to the meters, the bigger the meter, the more you pay.
Okay, just wanted to, I saw the chart and just wanted to make sure that we talk about that, because it would be alarming to us and to others if it were deemed inequitable, right, especially by a usage basis. So thank you for elaborating on that. Congratulations again on the AAA bond rating, right? Tenuous over the last number of years, but good, solid footing, and I know that's based on the financials. I want to take a step back and kind of address the structural situation that we do every year, but I think it's becoming even more stark in terms of the need for addressing it. If I understood correctly, part of the reason for the rate increase that you're proposing this year is because of the constrained increase over the prior years. And that has been a decision, a policy decision of this council and the executive and our counterparts in Prince George's County as well, in an effort to force a dialogue, force an understanding that the system and the policies cannot keep going as they are, right? That's the open secret with the water usage, with the efficiency that's out there. And so the only levers that we have at our disposal are these rates and these fees. How, as we continue moving forward, and I'm not going to prejudice the conversation by saying that we'll support this, right? But how do we leverage this policy decision with the policy changes that are needed? And this is not just for WSSC, it is industry sector-wide, utility-wide, but going to a different model where we're not dependent on these rate and fee increases every single year.
So one of the slides sort of indicated diversifying where we get funding from and diversifying revenues, because we do understand that the reason why we do not go to a full cost of service rate design model was because of that specific reason, that there'll be rate shock, and the increases, even though they'll be beneficial for us as a utility, we also want to be cognizant on affordability and what we're providing, services we're providing to our customers while maintaining the infrastructure that we have. So in addition to seeking more diverse sources of funding, federal funds, state funds, looking at our other fees, such as systems development costs, which have not increased for the past, I want to say, 10 to 15 years. We want to come and see that. And then also with our general fees, but then also what we're going to do internally, which has been a real initiative and directed by our general manager, is really make sure that when we're presenting our revenue enhancement request, we're showing why we're doing it. Because we have $9 billion in infrastructure, we have to maintain it. There were some deferred replacements and some deferrals that occurred historically. So we have to be in a position where we are planning on being proactive with replacements, with changes with CIP versus being reactive. Because if we're reactive, it's going to cost more, and it's going to end up being an unnecessary shock, and we may have to defer stuff internally. So it's really just improved communication and improved, when we're making the request, making sure we have enough support to justify why we're making that request.
I support that policy. The greater transparency, greater specificity helps us all. And the last question I'll ask before turning it over to colleagues, are there practices or policies that are being implemented in other jurisdictions, other utilities, trying to adopt new ways of doing business, recognizing that for all the reasons I mentioned and you've mentioned, the model for the last 104 years, is it, that WSSC has been around, we need to modernize some bit.
Yes, they are. As a matter of fact, 2 weeks ago, I came from a CFO forum where we were discussing the challenges that we're facing as a utility and how, from a finance perspective, we can expand what we can do with capital dollars and operating dollars. Because sometimes if we're able to transfer projects to capital. It frees up operating. Since operating dollars are 1 year, we can really get more stuff done operationally. So that's across the various levels within the organizations. There's position-specific or group-specific across-the-board utility meetings that occur, because these challenges, as you indicated, are not unique to us. They're unique to the industry. So if we can find universal solutions, that does nothing but help us.
Well, it seems like the budget for conferences is being well spent, so I look forward to more information as you talk with peers across the country about how to improve and modernize these utilities. With that, Councilmember Balcombe.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. I had the great pleasure of attending the open house this weekend in Germantown, the Seneca Resource Recovery Facility, and it was great. There was just a steady stream of families coming by. I think the dunk tank was a big success, and thank you for ordering the beautiful day. I think that was Ms. Marquina's great work, so I appreciate that. So one of the things that I walked away with was the little tablets to check leakage in the toilet. And so I think that goes to the issue of the declining consumption. I think people are just more aware of consumption. Technology is helping with decreased consumption. So I think we're in this situation where we have conflicting priorities. We have conflicting consumption, which is great and which is what we want, but it doesn't provide the revenue, the resources to run the full facility. So I agree with the idea of really looking at diversifying the revenue streams, or just the structure of how we pay for this critical public infrastructure, which leads me to the question of the federal funding. That's a stark contrast to the percentage of what was paid historically versus now. Do we know why, and can we work with our federal partners to look at this necessary infrastructure and get more support from federal partners?
So on the why, I'll state my opinion. My opinion is that the why is that no one sees our infrastructure. People only worry about it when there's an issue. Whereas if you look at what happens with the power companies or with internet, people tend to see it more. And then also people tend to not consider water a priority sometimes until they don't have it. So I think that's one of the whys. It's just that it's not visual and available. As far as funding, I know that we're actively having those conversations around getting improved federal funding and getting those levels raised up a bit, because again, the first slide showed that only 10% of the bipartisan bill, 5% of the bipartisan bill was dedicated to water, and that's really less than a drop in the bucket when you look at the number of utilities and the number of folks who could utilize that funding nationwide.
Okay, and please let us know in terms of we can be partners in working with our colleagues, our federal colleagues, to try to move that, because that's just such a stark difference, and from the perspective of looking at infrastructure and the safety of water, I think is important. So thank you on that. And in looking at the increased rates, when I looked at that, I thought about a discussion we had, I can't believe it was a year ago, but it must have been, the idea of monthly billing versus quarterly billing. And I think from the perspective of, I would imagine that, this may not be the last time we're faced with a rate increase, and I think that it would help with families for monthly billing for many reasons. So I don't know if you've had discussions about recent discussions.
Yes, we have. The challenge that we have right now is that our system is not built for monthly billing. We're currently coming up with a long-term and system-wide meter replacement program. And if we're able to get the right meters and the right infrastructure, we'll be able to transition from quarterly to monthly billing. And so that's a discussion which I guess will need the support and detailed discussions with you so that you're aware of what we're doing, why we're doing it, so that way when we really come to the table with our final need and request, everyone's aware of it and everyone's on the same page, and hopefully we can get that approved.
Thank you, and I'm looking forward to hearing that discussion, because I just think from a family finance perspective, the monthly billing, particularly as costs increase, I think that's important. And then just one last question about the Promise Pay program. That's creating payment plans for people who are delinquent. So where does the cost come in? Is there debt relief to that, or is it the cost of just running the program?
It's the cost of administrating the program. So none of the $3.3 million is applied to delinquent accounts. It's really just the cost of operating it. And the good thing about Promise Pay, they have multiple reminders. It's mail, it's text message, it's call. It's things that as a system we're not quite capable to do and take on. But the returns we get and the reduction of delinquent accounts, it covers that amount that is allocated to it.
Okay, great, which is another argument for the monthly billing. So,
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Balcombe. I just want to pick up real quick on the billing issue. While I understand the obstacles to going from quarterly to monthly, I've heard from a number of residents who've been alarmed at their large bills because instead of quarterly, they've been billed semi-annually. Can you speak to the discrepancy or the change in those billings?
Sorry, you indicated that they were billed semi-annually and not quarterly?
Yes, so a number of residents were alarmed at their bills and noted that they were for 6 months instead of a quarter.
We'll have to take a look at that. I'll follow up with our customer service team to find out for the folks who skipped a bill, why the bill was skipped, and if there was some other sort of discrepancy that happened.
That could be that one of the bills was an estimated bill, if they didn't have access or were not able to get an actual reading, and then so the first actual reading would have been 6 months later, and then they have to reconcile the bill. So that can exacerbate an already high bill, perhaps from a leak that goes undetected longer. So I think that's what you're referring to with the 6 months, because they have a 3-month billing cycle and and reading cycle, but they don't always get to every single meter every 3 months. So there are estimated readings sometimes.
So within that are a few different issues. One, I'm hearing that there is no move to do semi-annually, right? It's still quarterly, although it might be delayed because they're not physically able to read that meter, right?
Right. Weather conditions, shortage of meter readers.
Sure.
Occasionally there will be an estimated bill based on prior usage, but if the customer has a leak or higher usage than normal, that wouldn't be caught then until the next actual reading.
Understood.
What we don't have is real-time measuring of water usage like you would have with, say, electricity usage. So WSSC Water doesn't have a way to ping a customer to see that their usage has somehow changed dramatically.
Well, and
so that gets into the issue of automatic meter reading and advanced metering infrastructure, which has been an issue for a number of years. That's been discussed off and on.
Well, it's been brought to the council over the last number of years. I've always remained supportive of it. It hasn't moved anywhere for a variety of reasons. GM Powell is now at the table. I have additional thoughts, but I welcome yours right now.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the question. And this is why I continue to thank Keith for his partnership with us. He really pays attention to what's happening. It just so happens that this year we had a few weather events that impacted reading, and we started to see the results of those estimated bills where the meter readers were not able to get out and read meters. And it just so happened to be a more significant impact in Montgomery County because we have had shortages of meter readers in Montgomery. We've had difficulty keeping meter readers in Montgomery County. because of the difficult routes that they're having to read, the topography, the distance between properties has made it very challenging, especially in the weather conditions. And
Sounds like when I go door knocking, but yeah, that's another issue altogether.
well, we could give you some equipment and you could read meters along the way.
Touche.
But we do, as the CFO alluded to, have an RFI posted now to take a look at that. So we would really love the opportunity to be able to come back and perhaps do a specific briefing on the challenges that we have with the metering infrastructure. And we are and have been discussing how we might move to monthly billing sooner for customers that have challenges, but that would require us to replace their meters with AMR meters. And what we're wanting to do is make sure that we're not throwing good money after bad and really move to the technology that would be most beneficial to our customers, to allow them to get the monthly bills and also help us reduce costs overall in the long run.
Are you preparing to put that back on the table?
We would like to, but I just want to be clear for everyone that this budget does not include those costs. There was such a lag between when this was taken out of the budget, when a meter upgrade was taken out of the budget, and now that we felt we needed to get updated costs as well as updated input on what best practices are and what would be best for our service area. You may know that I believe the city of Rockville is moving forward with AMI, and that even, being in the same geography, we want to make sure that customers have an equitable approach to billing for water and sewer services. So we are collecting information from the market that will inform us on cost as well as technology.
Thank you, Ms. Powell.
Thank you.
Turn it over to Vice President Stewart.
I'll just start my comments on thank you to the commissioners and to everyone who's here today, and just reiterate, I think Monica knows this, I've been talking about the meters for many, many years, and if you do need support on moving this, please, we need to do this, what you're hearing from everyone. And I appreciate that you all are moving forward with this and understand the need to go back and look at the technology, look at the costs, and not rely on the old estimates you received. But just wanted to add my 2 cents there. And also just want to say, again, I think as I do every year, how much I appreciate the staff, particularly the staff in the field of WSSC. They are excellent. I represent a district that has very old infrastructure that does not always function well. And I will say when we've had issues with WSSC, particularly General Manager Powell, since you've taken over, the level of communication and responsiveness has been excellent. So I thank you for that. I also always very much appreciate in your reports to us the emphasis on racial equity and looking at that. And putting what we do here in Montgomery County in the context of our region and the country. As we've been stating, this is an issue that utilities are facing, governments are facing around the country, and I appreciate that you're looking at those, how we can make changes here that others are also making. Also appreciate the long-term financial planning for sustainability. And that actually goes to my question. And I think it's a question that actually came up in our Government Operations and Fiscal Policy Committee meeting on Friday when we were going over our compensation and benefits package here for Montgomery County. We also just quickly review WSSC, even though we don't have real say over that, but we were given a table that looked at the funding ratio for the pension plan for WSSC, and the latest numbers we had saw a significant decrease in the most recent funding ratio, going from a 97.6% funding ratio of the pension down to a 76.6% in December 2022. Anyway, it was just noted in the Government Operations and Fiscal Policy Committee meeting regarding that, and I thought, since you were all here, that I would raise that question. Hopefully you received notice that I was going to raise it before you got here, just so that we could discuss that.
So the reduction in the funding ratio was really due to the fact that in FY22, across the board was a difficult investment year, and we really do a focus in money markets. So we had a 13.1% loss. So that reduced us from $1.1 billion at the end of FY21 calendar year to $829 million. The good thing is that in FY23 we've experienced a rebound, and we had a positive investment return of 15.2%. Our target in the actuarial return is 7%, and so again, just because of 22, the market activity, and then the second factor is that our COLA increased to 7% in 2021 and 6.5% in 2022 versus the 2.5% actuarial assumption. So we didn't change it, but we're monitoring it. The 15.2% increase that I indicated brought our assets up to $909 million. So our funding status is back in the low 80%, which is positive and strong. The third thing that we also need to consider is that our pension plan is on a calendar year, not a fiscal year. So there's some activity that when we look at it, we have that lag when we're talking about what's going on in the fiscal versus what's going on in the calendar. But for all intents and purposes, we're expecting it to settle in the low 80% for the calendar year 2024.
Great. Thank you very much for that update. I appreciate it, and we will pass that along to the other members of the Government Operations Committee. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues. I just have one other item I want to raise, and it goes back to billing. A resident had written in just about the concerns about the billing, and that in the first quarter he typically is about 10,000 gallons, but there was an automated estimate, and the estimate was for much higher, thus affecting the billing. What corrective action should residents take if they believe that they have been misbilled or a misestimate?
So the estimate is based on the most recent actual bill. So what will happen is that when the team gets out to do the actual reading, there can be a comparison. So it may be, an example is sometimes in the fall, there will be more usage than in the winter. If someone is, doing some watering or just general activities. So oftentimes the best thing to do is when the actual red meter billing comes out is to compare that to your estimate, because again, your estimate is based on your last bill, whereas there could be a decline, especially in winter, so it should naturally be higher. Or if they have it available, they can look at what they were billed in the prior year, and assuming that there are no leaks, there's no additional significant usage, it should be within line.
Okay. Thank you for that. I'll share those with the constituent. Not seeing any other questions, we will approve this WSSC operating budget. Okay, that's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then, Mr. Lubchenco, do we want to take up the CIP? I know it was alluded to
Yes.
in the presentation.
Yeah, actually, a couple of the slides earlier that Mr. Panja mentioned went over the mid-cycle
Yep.
update. It's not it's not unusual for them to send over revisions, especially with regard to the Blue Plains projects, because they get updated information from DC Water on these projects. And if the timing works and the numbers are significant, they do like to get those correct in the budget that the council will approve. In this case, the 6-year number is relatively small for Blue Plains, but there are some significant annual adjustments that would be helpful for us to incorporate into the CIP. And then the other changes were in what we call the information-only projects. The focus on those projects is more so in year one, because that's what affects the 25 budget, per se, the operating and capital budgets. And they mentioned some of the items that they're adding there, and also moving some items over from operating to capital based on discussions with their auditor. So staff is comfortable with the mid-cycle update. What it would do is we would latch it on to the CIP discussion that we will have yet to have at the council. We're going to combine the CIP discussion with the operating discussion, I believe, on May 6th, which is when the council begins its full budget or full council budget deliberations. And we always do the bi-county agencies on that Monday so that we can turn around any issues by the bi-county meeting, which is the Thursday, May 9th. So I don't see any issues with the mid-cycle update today, and I'll just incorporate that into the full CIP discussion in a couple of weeks.
So with that, so we, as I noted, it was
So-
incorporated or alluded to in the previous presentation, and again, appreciate the thoughtfulness of and perspective. I think it's always important to note the work that you all are doing and the rates and the fees respective of our neighbors and other national partners, and look forward to learning more about what is happening at national conferences with regard to newer models. And let's have another conversation perhaps before the next budget about incorporation of new meters. I think you're hearing from this T&E committee, unlike previous T&E committees, that we welcome this so that we can end some of the confusion and we can allow people to better budget, which is incredibly important. So with that, we will support that CIP project, the CIP budget as well. And that is it for today's agenda. So thank you to WSSC, thank you to the commissioners, and we are adjourned.